Imagine this. You buy a home, maybe the biggest investment of your life, but you find out that the state can just take it away pretty much whenever it wants. Well, in China, that's not some crazy hypothetical. It's the fundamental reality of the system, and we're going to break down exactly how that works.
It sounds completely unbelievable, right? I mean, how can a system that's fueled one of the biggest real estate booms in history be built on such shaky ground? Well, let's dive in and see how it's even possible.
Okay, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with a core legal difference that basically changes everything you think you know about owning a home.
So here's the absolute key to the whole thing. In China, all the urban land is owned by the state. So when you buy a house, what you're really buying is just the physical building itself, the bricks, the mortar, the roof. The actual ground it sits on? Nope. For that, you're just getting the right to use it for a limited time.
And this really shows you just how temporary that right is. For a place to live, it's usually 70 years. For commercial stuff, 40 years. It's basically a long-term lease from the government. It is not permanent ownership. And this right here, this is where the real problems start.
So you have to ask, why is the system set up this way? Well, it's not just about some political ideology. It's about money. A lot of money. This legal setup has created a massive and often predatory business for local governments.
The whole thing really kicks off back in 1994. There was this huge tax reform that basically sent most of the tax money to the central government. All of a sudden, local governments were left with these huge bills for things like roads and schools, but not enough income to pay for them. They were desperate for cash, and they found it in land.
And this created a business model called land finance. Local governments figured out they could acquire land, give residents a pretty small compensation fee, and then turn around and sell the land use rights to developers for massive profit. And in that model, their own citizens, well, they stopped being a community to serve and just became a cost on a spreadsheet, a cost to be minimized.
So, of course, this created a huge amount of conflict. I mean, what happens when people refuse to take the lowball offer and just leave the homes they've lived in for generations?
Well, that resistance gave us this incredibly powerful symbol that's now known around the world, the nail house. These are the homes you see left standing all alone in the middle of a construction site, surrounded by rubble. They're called that because they're like a stubborn nail that just refuses to be hammered down. But, as you can imagine, holding out like that comes at a terrible price.
When residents refuse to leave, the authorities start to, well, turn up the heat. It's a systematic process designed to make life completely unbearable. The first thing to go? Your water.
Next, they shut off your electricity and your gas. Suddenly, you're plunged into this daily struggle just to survive in your own home.
And if you still refuse to buckle, the final step is forced demolition. Demolition crews just show up, often in the middle of the night, and they just tear the house down, whether you agree to it or not.
Now you're probably thinking, wait a minute, this has to be illegal. But here's the most chilling part of this whole story. On paper, it's often not. The system itself is built in a way that prevents any real justice.
When your home is being threatened, your first instinct is to go to the courts for protection, right? But in this situation, the courts offer very little hope. Why? Because the system is basically designed to fail the residents from the start.
Here's why it's a losing battle. First, the laws for seizing land for the public interest are incredibly vague and can mean almost anything. Second, the compensation amount is decided by the same local government that stands to make a fortune from the deal. And here's the real kicker. The courts are part of that same government system. They're not about to challenge a major government project. So because the whole thing technically follows the letter of the law, it creates what one source calls a silent hell, a situation where you have no legal way out.
You know, this experience, it's done more than just knock down buildings. It has left these deep, deep scars on the social fabric, and it's completely changed how an entire generation sees their own society.
The long-term result is this really deep-seated cynicism. People have learned that the law isn't a shield to protect them, it's a tool used by the state. It creates this belief that your property rights aren't really guaranteed, they just depend on the government's mood. And that in turn leads to a massive distrust in long-term investment and fuels this desire, especially among young people, to just pack up and leave the country.
And look, even though the story is about China, its core message is really a universal warning. It's about the relationship between a government, its people, and the very idea of what it means to own something.
The thing to understand is that this isn't some secret conspiracy or the work of a few bad apples. It's the predictable, almost inevitable outcome of a system where the government's budget depends on seizing and selling land. When the whole legal system is designed to serve government policy, the structure itself creates the tragedy.
And that leaves us with a really big, unsettling question that applies way beyond China. In any country, anywhere in the world, when the financial needs of the state clash directly with the rights of an individual, which one is going to win? I mean, what is a right truly worth if it can be legally erased just for the sake of profit?